Xmas edition, 2022. Thank you so much to everyone who has come along. We are holding these events so that women can speak their minds, they can speak truth to power regarding gender identity ideology or the synthetic sex agenda, as Jennifer Black says. Without further ado, who would like to be the first speaker?
I will.
All right, come on up.
Hi, everybody. What am I doing? I've got to move. Okay. Yeah, look, thanks so much for coming. Is that better? Yeah, thank you. So, for me, this whole bizarre world that we now are expected to live in reminds me of a time when I wasn't an adult. It was a time when women had to do everything that men said. Women couldn't work. The man was the boss of the world. Well, it bloody well hasn't changed. Men are the bosses of the world. They've taken over women's spaces. They've forgotten that women gave birth to them. They've forgotten that women are the most important people on this planet. Without men, without women, there'd be nobody. I think that really needs to be remembered, that for people to support the fact that men can magically become women is so bizarre, and the only reason that anybody can become a woman is to be born a female. You must be born female. You're not assigned a sex. It's not a gender. You get assigned a, don't get assigned a sex. You get born a sex. You're born female or you're born male. The whole world that we're living in here in Melbourne, soon the what are they called, the hate speech laws are about to come in. Had a sign that I had up a couple of weeks ago on voting day that said, defend women's sex-based rights. Now that would be called hate speech. Hate speech. I mean, please explain how that can possibly be seen as hate speech. It is just, it blows my mind, it blows everybody's mind. People don't believe this stuff. They're being forced to say they believe it. People like us who come out and say the stuff that people are thinking are being trashed. People are losing their jobs for just saying the truth. And to live in a world now where you're not allowed to say the truth, that the truth has become hate speech, is it does my head in every day. If I'm out, when I go to the shops, I absolutely must take something of suffragette colours. I must have a badge on that says something really basic, like lesbians don't have penises. You know, and you nobody lesbians are same-sex attracted people, and women don't have penises. Come on, I don't care how you feel. I don't. Get help. You really genuinely need to get help. As soon as you see a little bit of sense, of course, your transgender family will abandon you. You'll no longer have the crazies' support. I could probably just go on forever and ever and ever, and we've all heard this stuff before. we're sick to death of hearing it every day now. It's on TV. The ABC love it. The ABC have got, you know, a transgender somebody somewhere. And this is the transgender ideology situation, of course, we all know is absolutely bizarre. But my focus is keeping women's sex-based rights. Now, if that upsets somebody who thinks that that's where they belong, and if they're not a female, then they can just fuck off, in our opinion. And that's about all I've got to say at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say something too regarding the hate speech laws, or rather the conflict. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I know that there's someone here that is a lawyer. There was a case, it might be a test case. We don't know the details. We only found out about it last week. Hang on, I'm losing track of the days. This week, sorry, week just been. We don't know which state in Australia, but we know it's in Australia. Parents, mother and father, were in court, one child, because of their primary school aged child. Now, the clinic, wherever it was in Australia, wanted to put that child on puberty blockers, okay? One parent, I don't know which, supported it, the other did not. And I'm thinking, hence the court case. Now, apparently, it's the first time in Australia that these types of court cases, because there have been a few, have been held with evidence, in contrast to the clinic. Funnily enough, the clinic backed out on their recommendations to treat a primary school-aged child with puberty blockers, probably because of the weight of the evidence against that advice, to which Women's Action Group, myself personally, and I'm sure anyone with a half-thinking brain is absolutely rapt about. Now, I've not yet read the proposed hate speech bill, but I will. I'll get to that. Yes. She doesn't call it the hate speech bill. She's called it something else. Did she get back in again?
She's gone mad.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. No, it's not finalised. So the hate speech bill is not finalised yet.
How does it fit? She's supposed to be a libertarian.
No. Oh, okay. Sorry. Whether or not she... Well, but also too, it hasn't been passed. So anyway, so if you go to the Attorney General's website and you go to the Human Rights section and then the section regarding sex and gender, you will see a very, very clear directive. It's actually a clear answer to the question regarding the change back in 2013. 2013, which law was it? The sex...
discrimination.
Thank you, sex discrimination. Sorry, it's so hot here, I can barely think. Okay. The Sex Discrimination Act, where they in fact changed it in 2013 to say gender identity and your sexual identity. So, or sexual orientation, sorry. And so the question on the website is, does this mean that the categories of male and female are no longer exist? The answer is a very clear and firm no. Don't know why anyone hasn't said that, but or not. I mean, if I said it, I've missed it. But yeah. So anyway, who would like to come up and speak next? Come on up.
Hello everyone, my name's Juanita and I am new to this movement, and I started learning about this about 6 months ago, and have been slowly educating myself and finding the right people to listen to online, and am absolutely horrified by what's actually happening. About the 1840s is when women first got our own public toilets, somewhere in the world. I can't remember where it actually was, but that's when it first started. And we also got the vote 127 years ago, and Catherine Shepherd was the first suffragette movement woman in New Zealand, and that's where it started. And then here in Victoria, we got the vote. We were the 4th place in the world to actually get the vote for women. 127 years later, we're no longer allowed to have our own space in the public toilets. And the whole reason for having public toilets for women and for men was for women is for our safety, privacy and our dignity. How many of us have grown up, myself included, watching mothers with their boys who are like 12 and under, bringing them into the women's toilets to use because they don't want their boys to go into the men's toilets because they don't feel safe in case there might be the wrong male that's in there. Now those males are allowed to come into our space if they want to self-ID. And for me, that is not okay. That's going against my basic human rights as a woman to have my own private space for me to feel safe. Yeah, sorry, I've just gone numb. It's it's just it's utter madness that we are not allowed to say that we're women. We're losing our language, and that's not okay. And basically, it's all to appease men who want to pretend and come into our space. And this has nothing, for me personally, this has nothing to do with trans women. This is about men identifying as women and wanting to come into our space. And that is not okay because I don't feel safe. I have been groped by men in public places, and also privately in places. In my own home, on planes, in a church, and yet I'm supposed to let those men come into my space and say that it's okay for them to be there. And I say it's not, and it's time for women to stand up and stop going against each other and defending men's rights to invade our space.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that is absolutely right. We mothers do take our children into the women's to protect them against, especially the boys, obviously, against perhaps predatory men. One thing we know for sure, obviously not all men are predatory, but men that are predatory will do absolutely anything to gain access to women and children. That is a fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what better way than to say, oh, I'm a woman.
Yeah.
So easy. All right. I think I know who the next speaker is going to be. And it's, oh, here we go.
Hi everyone, Nam, Melbourne. I'd like to express my gratitude for all the women that have come before me. Every person has a mother. I'd like to shout out to my favourites on YouTube, the beautifully named Musty Underboob, and also in the US, Musty Underboob is in the Netherlands, and in the US, Exelanzic, Brittany, whose channel is A Slightly Twisted Female, Amy Souza, who is The Known Heretic, and Kay Yang, who is The Deprogrammer. And there's Karen Davis from You're Kidding Right. So there are so many women around the world doing this work, and I'm really, really grateful. Oh, and the Landies, all the motherfucking Landies. And of course, Kelly J. Keane, who is the inspiration for this event. And our last one, and our next one. Yeah, I've gone blank too. Okay. The whole notion that men can be women, can become women, and particularly the idea that men can become women on nothing more than a self-declaration in one little lie that trans women are women undermines every single right that women have, every single right that we've been fighting for hundreds of years. So right now at Deer Park in Melbourne at the women's prison in high security, there is a man. He was convicted for raping, or two men now, okay. So one of them was convicted for raping a 6-year-old girl in Germany. He was jailed, and upon his release he was deported, where in broad daylight he knocked a woman to the ground and said, "Shut up and let me rape you." The women in the prison at Deer Park are begging. They are begging for these men to be removed, and nobody is listening to them. And this is why we have to come together with events like this, so we can say the things that nobody will permit us to say. Trans women are men. Women say no. We say no. Women are absolutely entitled to exclude men. We know a man when we see one. And no woman, no girl should even have to be anxious that she's going to encounter a man or a boy in her space. You know, we've had a really strong social contract until very recently that men will stay out of women's spaces. We've understood and we've acknowledged that a man who wants to be in a women's only space is a bad man, and that there will be recourse.
Yes.
If we say there's a man in there, somebody will do something about it. But here we are, where we are banned from all the major social media platforms if we speak out and say this. But women say no. We say no, and you will listen to us.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Women say no. That's it, really. It's pretty simple. It's not complex, and certainly isn't complex to achieve. Been achieving it for how many centuries now? You know, so anyway. We have our next lovely speaker.
Hello. Oh, it's hot, isn't it? There have been so many things this week that have just driven me a bit mad. Apart from the ABC and that nonsense, I don't know if anybody listened to Big Ideas. Was it Big Ideas the other day? That was the reporting from the Melbourne Uni event on Pride and Prejudice in policy, looking at universities taking on the AWEI things, and the way that the ABC had framed that and cut a lot of the content. Cordelia Fine didn't even get a mention, and she organised that event. Thank you, Cordelia. They played it, was fabulous. Linda Gale and Alan Davison. If you haven't listened, catch her. It's on the Radio National website. That was frustrating. That was like the bits that we did get to hear. No Kathleen Stock. Cut. Like Helen Joyce recently, who did an interview with ABC. Oh, they had technical difficulties. And it really feels like the ABC don't want women getting any of those pesky ideas about speaking out. It's like, well, we're here and we're talking. So ABC have driven me a bit mad this week, but I also wanted to say, I've got my IWD Brisbane Meanjin t-shirt on today in solidarity with Anne McCormack and the Queensland women. And I wanted to say too that I spoke with Jessica Hoyle in Tasmania this week about the court case, her appeal to have lesbian-only events or women-only lesbian events, like too much to ask for in Tasmania, it would seem. Ridiculous state of affairs, and I find that where I live, I would love to be able to go to lesbian events, but I have been excluded because I believe that lesbians are female, and because that is known that I believe that, I'm not allowed, I'm excluded in the name of the inclusion of males. It's just bullshit. And so I just really want to say thank you to Jessica. I know she's been having a hard time. She's been ripped apart in the media and by trans rights activists. And it's like, I don't know what we're thinking is going to happen to young women who want to come out as lesbians and they're just being forced to meet in secret, have no access to any sort of lesbian spaces. They're allowed to venture into queer spaces. where there will be males telling them that they're lesbians. And I don't know, I just can't believe that we're allowing this. So just thank you to everyone who speaks up, and solidarity around Australia, and Merry Christmas. Cheers.
Okay, wonderful. Next speaker. Who would like to come up?
I would.
Come on up.
The wife to help me get to my
Wonderful. Just for those watching at home, it is so hot. Is it 33 or something?
Yeah, something stupid like that.
So if we melt, you'll know why.
The people up north are laughing at us.
People up north are laughing at us. That's not hot. Yeah.
Hiya, my name's Joe Smith. Some of you may remember me from such hits as "Hello, thank you for having me on Turf Talk." Watch me swear my tits off. Back in the early days, before they, got higher up the food chain with who they can attract, and fabulous to see you all. I know many of you, and many of you know me. I don't think there's any meme truer than that one that says, the fact that society believes a man who says he's a woman rather than the woman who says he isn't tells you they know exactly who the man is.
Yes.
And so many things, if there's one thing, and there's so many things that make you want to scream about this whole complete mess. But if there's one thing that annoys me more than others, it's the way so many things have been taken as read, like John Fane fawning all over the trans woman. It's clearly sort of, he's on good friendly terms with, but that's the one. I think we're not allowed to name names, are we? Peters. John Fane basically, fawned all over that person who, and look, I'm sure there's plenty to say about them, but in fairness, everyone else ducked out. The ridiculous Sally Hines, who's a, drunk English academic who posts helpful, intelligent things like, "A turf's even fuckable," she ducked out because she was afraid of being on a platform with trans folks. So what I wanted to say was things that have been taken as read. Trans people have had a terribly hard time. You've been so brave, Julie. I don't know how. No, they're not. They're the single lowest risk demographic in the UK, certainly, and largely here. There have been no murders of trans people for being trans. Yes, there was a murder-suicide of a guy and his trans partner, who he knew perfectly well was trans. That wasn't a random attack. No one has ever produced a credible report of a trans woman going into a male toilet and being attacked. And I'm sure people might get attacked in prison, but people who are particularly vulnerable can be placed in a contained unit, like they put all the kiddie fiddlers together. Even then they tend to attack each other. But they can be put in a contained space, and if they're male, they can put them in that space in the male prison. Women don't. Women always have to budge up for men, and that needs to stop. But we also need to knock this myth on the head that there's a trans genocide going on, that they're at incredibly high risk. Those figures that say all these deaths, those are virtually all of South American prostitutes, and prostituted people the world over are one of the highest risk demographics. The vast majority of people killed because of involvement in prostitution are women, actual women, So that myth needs knocking on the head. Most men seeing a bloke in a dress in the men's toilet would say, "Oh, okay," and probably avoid looking rather than they. But there's no credible recorded case I have ever come across, and God knows I've looked because I'm odd like that, of a trans woman going into the men's loos and being attacked. And all this stuff about this wave of violence, these terrible things. They only managed to make that case by including a bit of side-eye as violence, or someone looking at you a bit funny. Or then I've been asked what I'm doing in the ladies a million times. And the minute I'm so sorry. People's apology is out of all proportion. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? It's always out of all proportion to how offended. I'm never offended. I mean, it doesn't happen so much now. I'm older and fatter. But when I was younger and thinner, especially if I was riding my motorbike and covered in leather. You wear enough leather, nobody argues with you. I conducted a public meeting in a full set of bike here once, and I was saying, "Do you all agree with the equal ops clause?" Whatever you say, Joe. It's great. You know, we'd say, "You sure you're in the right one?" "Yes, I'm sure." "Oh, sorry, really sorry." The short hair. Yes. So we need
You
to.
mean you didn't kill yourself?
No, and funnily enough,
God.
well, I did, but I recovered. You know, it's yeah, exactly. And the stat about the kind of 194% risk of suicide if someone looks at you funny, or that sort of 47% have considered, attempted, or blah blah suicide. That was from a self-selecting survey of 27 people, and they didn't differentiate between, you know, the standard teenage, "I'm going to hold my breath till I die and then you'll be sorry" tantrum, and actual genuine suicidal ideation and attempts. Also, there's no other condition which is essentially a mental health one, where we respond with recommending surgery and massive medical intervention. You know, we don't give anorexics amphetamines, you know, or liposuction. We don't give people with body dysmorphia who feel they've got a limb too many an amputation, although there's been the odd nutty doctor in the past who did. But this kind of wave of trans identification, and anything where a whole group of girls in the same peer group or the same year at school suddenly announce they're trans boys, that's a social contagion. I don't know how anybody can keep a straight face arguing that it isn't. Because, I mean, you know, and their argument is that, well, people can come out now because there's more acceptance and visibility. But you remember back at school, when they were about 13, 14, and half your year killed themselves because they couldn't be boys? Because I don't remember that either. You know, that never happened, you know? And it's not because it was, there's always been a tiny number, and yes, they've been the stuff of tabloids, but a tiny number of people with a dysphoric feelings around their sex, so much so that they were better served by undergoing whatever intervention was available to turn them, to make them look more like the opposite sex. But it was a social, what's it called, a legal fiction that we treated them as a member of that sex. Nobody really thought, nobody thinks, what's his name, the ex-skier is a woman. And 20, 30, 40 years ago, nobody would have been expected to pretend. But now we're supposed to believe that those persons' lives are at risk.
Well, what about fucking Dean Laidley?
What about him?
Oh, God, what a moron.
And what's interesting, you know, the fawning all over him. You know, let's forget and the same with Kelly Nee Frank Maloney, the British boxing promoter. It's all brave and stunning. Here these, you know, 50-something men wearing an outfit that would embarrass your average teenager. You know, and it's all kind of shows off her lovely legs. You know, people are insane.
Yeah.
But it's the same phenomenon as when these sort of stubbly, beardy, lumpy guys look in the mirror and they see some lissom young lovely winking back at them. It's I mean, that's kind of genuinely delusional, isn't it? Their perception of how well they pass. I mean, in fairness, the trans men often do pass, but someone's in for a shock when they go home with one. I mean, the chances that, you know, and I'll shut up in a moment, honestly. I'll just make a last point, which is that there was an article the other day, and I can't remember, it might have been Julie Bindell or someone anyway on Substack or Medium, saying these guys have been sold a pup because they've got the idea that once they transition, there will be partners, they'll be welcome in lesbian spaces and beds. No, they won't. Most of them are very unlikely to get a partner. I know that some settle for a fellow trans woman as a partner. I think that's the position Miranda Yardley and partner are in. You know, but their delusion, and that's partly because what they see as lesbians, it's not lesbians, it's not lumpy old bats like me, or skinny bats like you, but it's what pornography thinks lesbians look like, which is exactly like straight women, only, you know, and it's, so we need to knock this on the head, and we need to point out that a phobia is a fear or a fear or hatred. I don't fear or hate trans people. I just don't think men can be women. You know, a phobia is the thing that makes someone who is afraid of spiders freeze and nearly crash their car if they see a spider on the windscreen. You know, we don't fear or afraid, and that's another thing that's been given a free pass, that it's a phobia the minute you're not comfortable with something. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Thank you.
The grass is a bit spiky. For those who don't know me, I'm Nina Valens. So I think a lot about the tension between the liberation of being an out radical feminist and the consequences of that, and kind of our fears around the implications of the gender movement for freedom of speech. And I think it's really important that we don't allow ourselves to be cowed into silence. But I also recognise that there are consequences for people who speak out. So I want to talk a little bit about this. 2 years ago, a year ago, I think 2 years ago, when they passed the conversion and change suppression practice bill, there was a lot of commentary about what this law would mean in practice. And there was commentary which said that therapists, counsellors, etc. would no longer be able to use the watchful waiting approach with a child who presented with gender dysphoria, that they would be guilty of a crime and liable for up to 10 years in prison. And this is wrong. That's not how the law functions. What the law did or does is it says that change and suppression practices are prohibited, but not all so-called change and suppression practices are criminal conduct. So they're all prohibited, but some of them might be prohibited and nothing happens. You've just done one and that's the end of it. And then others, if they're done negligently and they cause a serious injury, then that is a criminal offence. So an example I heard quite often at the time was if a lesbian woman is talking to a teenage girl who's questioning her sexual orientation and or her gender identity, that if a lesbian woman encourages this girl to think that maybe she's a lesbian and to explore that, that lesbian could be found guilty of a change or suppression practice and sentenced to up to 10 years in jail. But that's wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. It's not going to happen because that one conversation wouldn't have been done with serious negligence and wouldn't cause an injury in and of itself. And I think it's really harmful to us if we go around saying this is the consequence of that bill, and it's a grossly exaggerated consequence that we're saying, because it tells us that we have to be silent. Like our misinterpretation and our exaggeration of the consequences of this law for ordinary people will stop other people from speaking out. What it says in relation to health practitioners is that, the affirmation model is not a form of conversion. So if you affirm, then you're fine. If you do something else, which might be interpreted as a change or suppression practice, so to change a person's sexual orientation or to suppress their gender identity, then yes, in theory you could, and you cause an injury, you could be guilty of a criminal act. However, the medical practitioner has the defence that if they were doing this therapy, this treatment, I can't remember the exact words, but something along, like they thought it was in the best interest of the child and it's in line with other reasonable medical practice, then they can't be found guilty of criminal conduct. So this is, something that you see in professional negligence cases in the law. If any professional is acting in a way which is in accordance with, professional practice, then that can't be found to be negligent, right? So while perhaps the great majority of practitioners are practicing the affirmation model, a medical practitioner would only need to find like another expert in the field to say watchful waiting is a reasonable approach, and that person wouldn't be found guilty of criminal conduct. So medical practitioners particularly have got protection under the law. What the bill or law does is it sets up ambiguity. So it says that this practice is prohibited. You know, it says that there are these 10-year penalties for doing something which is not the affirmation approach. So it's intended to silence. You know, it's not actually intended to lock people up. It's intended to silence. You can see that that is how the law is meant to work, that it's so kind of contorted, and you've got to read through like all these different sections, and you've got to read this one to then understand that one. You know, in order to understand all of it, you've got to read it very carefully, which the ordinary person isn't going to do. So you'll have medical practitioners who do think that if they do anything other than the affirmation approach, then they're liable for criminal conduct. So that's also why it's really important for us not to say that people will be locked up, because we don't want therapists thinking that they're going to be locked up if they do anything other than affirm. But yes, it's very insidious, because clearly this law is intended to make us fearful, to make us want to be silent. And I think it's also why it's just so important not to be silent. And it's great that, you know, we're here and we're willing to be on camera and we're speaking under our own names and we're identified, because the more of us who do that, then the harder it is to keep us silent. So continue speaking up, sisters.
Wonderful. I just wanted to say something. There used to be, or there was, a few years ago, a radio program called Counting the Dead. I don't know if any of you had heard of it. Now, when I came across this Counting the Dead show, I was back in the early years of my turfery, and you know, I was at that stage where it was all very new. This idea that men can be women, and men can also call themselves lesbians. I was a bit shocked, but taken aback. Who wouldn't be, or who isn't? Right? I continue to be shocked and taken aback. Anyway, I sat down and I tortured myself listening to that show, which has only 2 episodes. I think it was 3 hours of my life that I'll never get back. And guess how many he counted? And this is for, by the way, this is for Australia, obviously.
3.
2.
2 women killed in the last day.
Exactly right. 2 women killed in the last day. He was looking at a period of something like 10 years. So now, obviously, I'm not laughing at, you know, anyone being murdered. Of course, that's awful. But when we are told constantly that these men who call themselves women are killed, are attacked, where are the stats? By the way, that Counting the Dead show folded after 2 episodes.
It's dead.
Guess what? It's dead. They're probably going to add that to their count as well. Anyway. All right, so who would like to speak next? Come on up.
It's being live streamed.
Where's it being live streamed to?
YouTube.
YouTube.
We're on YouTube live stream. Would you rather speak off camera?
Yes, I'd be happy to do
Yeah,
that.
okay, cool. What I might get you to do, because I'm not sure about the feedback, I might just, thanks, son. Don't stop it or anything.
No,
just
no,
keep it
if
going.
you stand where Michelle is,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
won't be on camera, I promise.
So if you stand here, she's put the camera away.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Now just make sure, God, I keep forgetting to tell you, you must hold the mic up like this. See how loud my voice is? It's not just that I'm a loud mouth. It's that I'm just holding the mic right up there. This is a singer, you know, musos say you've got to kiss the mic, all right, or you get in trouble with the sound tech. So anyway.
I think the teaching grandmother is up here.
If you just stand here, you'll be right. Yeah. So just stand over here. Yeah. She's got it pointed over there.
Hey, I am not really a public speaker.
but I'm going to say a few things. I just want to reflect, one of the most crazy things to me is this assigned male at birth, assigned female at birth. I just can't believe it. How has anyone swallowed that whole? Gosh. It's like it's a mass psychosis out there. And it's only thee and me that are still, sane. I do feel a lot of loss. I dislike the feeling of, I feel that I had, over a long period of time, embraced a notion that we were not on the margins, we were less and less marginal. And I don't really want to go back to being marginal. I feel that, especially since equal marriage, for better or worse, that has changed the game for lesbians and gay people. And I'm reluctant, both personally and politically and professionally, to be on the margins again. I intend to fight to the death for what I want in my career and to not be cowed in any way. I still want my work to speak to everyone. I don't want to just speak to 10 women at a rally. I want to speak to everyone. That's always been my hope in the area of work that I do. I'm lucky enough to work in aged care, and the people, I can tell you, from 80 to 100, they are sane, and they're not down this rabbit hole. I feel so fortunate to be in that context. I actually feel safe there, day in, day out. I'm truly grateful for the turn of events that has brought me to work in that part of the industry, in my profession at this time. But I feel a lot of loss and sadness, especially when I hear things like that KD Lang is now identifying with she, they pronouns. That's not nothing to me. That's a huge loss. I've loved KD Lang and her work all my life. Why does my relationship to her have to change? I mean, I don't know her personally, you know what I'm saying, but I just try and sit with it all because it's not nothing to me. I just keep my eye on the ball and my ear to the ground and see what happens. I find it really difficult to just dispose of people who have been once radical, and I think there's a lot of just laziness, no thought about things. People just go with the flow, and unfortunately, then the voice that speaks the loudest and takes up the most space, that's the one that gets heard. And that's what's happened, basically. So it's with some sadness that we're in this situation, and I just intend to take it a step at a time. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you so much. Yeah, I did not know that about KD Lang. That is sad. That really is, and we all know, we don't know musicians, famous musicians personally, but my goodness, we all have a personal connection to them, and musos know this too, Anyway, who would like to speak next? Lovely. So we've got another off camera. Off camera? There's an off camera. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So just stand there.
I was having a very delicious conversation last night with a friend, and I'll use some of my messages here as guidance to what I'd like to share with you today. I grew up gender non-conforming in the global south. Life has taken me across the world. I've lived in about four or five countries, and now I'm in Australia. And growing up, I saw a lot of poverty around me, and I saw men and women having a really hard time. And my mother had a really hard time. My mother never finished primary school, And she raised 6 kids, and her husband left her, and my dad left her. And he went off to live a fairly prosperous life on his own and left a woman with 6 kids in the global south. One of the things that I always remember growing up from maybe about the age of 5 is the 13-year-old girl that lived next door to me who washed all day. She stopped, I think they took her out of education at about 11 or 12, and that was her life. You know, so boys had the luxury, the protection of getting an education already, but girls didn't. Growing up in the global south, I saw a lot of sex stereotypes, and some of it is based on biology, and we must be careful because I think our biological imperatives such as pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding, these things that make women vulnerable, must be protected. But the homophobia and the machismo was very, very strong. And I didn't want to get caught up in, you know, having a really, really hard life. So I listened to my mom, and she was always, I can't give you anything. All I can give you is your education. Don't waste it. Get your education. And that's pretty much the reason why I'm sitting here today. So from a very young age, I learned that nobody can change sex. And then later on, I grew to realize that a lot of the violence that women and children face is because they're vulnerable, because of their sex, and it's because of their age. I had, when I started, what piqued me into this fight was, as privileged as I am now, I still look back home, and I still see a lot of the poverty that oppresses everyone, men and women, but it always oppresses women more. So many bad ideas have been hatched up in the global and wealthy north and sold downriver to the global south, where it has absolutely no place. Gender ideology is another one of these bad ideas that is now being sold down the river. And that's why I started to educate myself, because these NGOs are staffed by the women who, of the same education class, that is changing the word woman, removing the word woman from maternity services around the world. And they are going to make the sex-based violence that women face in the global south, in places like Guatemala, and Honduras, and El Salvador, that have some of the highest rates of femicide in the world, it's going to be gender-based violence. No, it's sex-based violence. So I got into this fight because of the way the poor people suffer around the world. And recently on YouTube, I can't remember which show, I should have bookmarked it, but this stuff is now in the NGOs in Zambia. For Zambia, crying out loud. You know, where 100% of women breastfeed. You know, it's where women suffer, some of the places like the Congo, where women suffer the highest rate of rape in the world. Children, sorry. You know, this stuff needs to be put away. To see Raquel Rosario Sanchez lose her case against Bristol University, you know, a black Spanish-speaking Dominicana goes and is abused by rich white children. And I'm not just saying white. I mean, I'm sure there are brown people, I know brown people like myself, are caught up in this nonsense. So I'm on a mission to make sure that the little corner of the globe where I was born is, I'm doing some of the fight for them. luckily have had connections with people in government, and I am working on slowly turfing out some of the government representatives from where I was born. But, because I was gender non-conforming, everyone at home thought, oh, she must be a lesbian. I mean, you're looking at a 12-year-old girl. I wasn't thinking about sex. I wasn't thinking about boys or girls. I was thinking about having a good time, going to school. And whenever, it just became worse as I grew up, that you almost had to, you're 25, or what are you going to do now? When are you going to find a man? Oh, you must be a woman. All the gossip was always there. People just seem to want to put you in a box. And I don't live in a box. So I'm not going to ever adopt any of this nonsense language that's coming out. And I'm certainly not going to be talking about, the parently art of breastfeeding. It's women that breastfeed, and those women are called mothers. I've been kicked out of organizations, of groups, for speaking up for women. I don't care. I will safeguard women, I will safeguard children, and I will safeguard babies. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. You need a hand up? I think, you're right, Nelson. Thanks. Thank you so much for that. And I guess, I'm co-founder not just of Women's Action Group, which is why we're here today, but also Manawahine Kōrero, which is for Māori women who are concerned about this ideology imposing itself upon our culture, not the other way around. And we're very, very clear about that. In Māori culture, there is no evidence of any of our tipuna, ancestors, saying, especially the tane, the men, saying that they were women. There have been claims that Māori culture revered transgender people, and that transgender people held high status in our culture. Bullshit. Bullshit. Absolute fucking bullshit. It is a lie. It is a lie. It is a lie. And we at Manawahine Kōrero will not put up with it. And there is some truth, to the belief that, or not belief, but the fact that, a lot of the people that are against us, or the TRAs or MRAs we call them, are middle-class white kids. That's just a fact. Yes, there are some, even of my, colour, that support them, mostly from academia. This has come from academia, right?
Butler did it.
Butler did it. And look, I'm not an academic, but as far as I can tell, this has nothing to do with feminism.
Come from pervs.
Come from pervs, yeah, absolutely. That's right. Anyway, yeah, so who would like to go next? Come on up. Did you want on camera?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Right. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Deb Ramsey. Listening to the other speak. Oh, sorry. I am not a trained professional. Listening to the others speak and hearing about the sadness and the pain, and I feel those things, but mostly I'm really, really pissed off. I am very, very angry. I have lived through lots of patriarchal bullshit throughout my life. I'm not going to detail the things that have happened to me, but a lot has happened. And I got to a place where I was stable and happy and didn't have to deal with that kind of crap. And guess what? Here it is again. Here it is, worse than it ever was before. I saw online Aja, however you pronounce her name, kissing a woman in front of a bunch of protesting TRAs. And it just blew my freaking mind that here we are, it's 2022, and we were doing that back in 1990 in front of the Klan to say that here we are, we're lesbians, we are not going to change for you. And here it is. What? 30 years later, 32 years later, and there's a whole new religion that's sprung up that's worse than Christianity. Christianity at least stays in its lane usually. But this group, they want everything from everyone. They don't recruit. They beat you into submission. And I am angry. And I have to deal with that anger. And the way that I deal with that anger is being here today and saying, I refuse your dogma. I will not be told that what my eyes can see is not what's true. You are not magicians. You are not creating an illusion. We can see behind your frilly dress that there's no there there. And part of my anger is that a whole generation of young women, young girls, that we fought so hard not to have to go through this. We fought so hard so that girls in high school could figure out their sexuality and not be kicked out, not have to, be pariahs. They could live happy and healthy as from the very beginning and not have to sleep with men to figure it out. And now they're being put through a medical cycle that can start as soon as they start talking back. Because that's what gender nonconformity really is in a child. It's saying no. It's saying, I don't want to act that way because that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't want to wear that. I prefer this. Talking back, that's it. And you're on a pathway. The pathway starts with social transition by your creepy parents. It starts with that social transition and moves into puberty blockers to keep you young forever, no matter how crippled you may become. It then moves into cross-sex hormones to turn you into an approximation of someone's idea of what a man is. And then it turns you into someone who regrets the hell out of what's happened to them. The surgeries that have taken their breasts, their uteruses, their ability to procreate, their ability to be at ease in their own body and their own sexuality. And I don't know how any lesbian can condone that and can live with that. It makes me so angry, just so fucking angry. So I have one thing to say, and I hope you'll all join me, because it's what I like to say a lot. Lesbians don't have penises or dicks. All right, well, let's go with dicks. Lesbians don't have dicks. One more time.
Lesbians don't have dicks.
Well done. Fantastic. Right.
Gosh, I think we're probably about to wrap up now, unless there's someone else who'd like to come up and speak. Anyone else?
I just want to come back and I want to say thank you to my Women's Action Group sisters. I want to say thank you to all the women that stand with us. I want to say thank you to all the men that stand with us and are prepared to stand up for this. And in the words of Amy Souza and Kay Yang, I want to say, let this be a record of my dissent.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
One last speaker before we head off.
He's our token man.
Our token man.
How can you tell?
How indeed.
Thanks very much. I'll be right. I'll just unfold it. This is a reveal. One of my main areas of concentration in this movement has been with working with some people pretty much behind the scenes in the area of communication and messaging and framing. I've been involved in some of the framing activities that have gone on. Some of that's translated into some of the words that are on the Lost in Transition website, and also I believe some of the communication by the what's called the ROGD mums that have met with politicians. The general framing project has contributed to that, but I think that's really important to be always trying to think of what's a way you can answer some of these questions or accusations that gets you somewhere, because the whole idea of the way they bastardize language and that is to push you into this ridiculous trap where you don't know what to say, you don't know what to think, and ultimately to silence you, as Nina said before, the silencing. So just a couple of little things that I've was working on, just a couple of short ones, was, for example, when they accuse us of saying, well, you're anti-trans, a couple of little things that we can say are things like, well, what part of my desire to help autistic girls is anti-trans? So you sort of answer a question with a question, or what part of wanting to protect traumatised Indigenous girls is anti-trans? It's that type of thing, or they might say something like, "No one is really bothered about this, only you." That's a classic one. We can say something like, well, only me? All mature, rational adults are bothered about anything that reduces the safety and privacy of young girls, especially when they are changing or attending to their intimate needs that relate entirely to their sex as females. So that's just a couple of examples. It's trying to think of ways to communicate and not to let ourselves go down this rabbit hole, because it's all linguistic traps and what they call Kafka traps and logical fallacies and rhetorical devices. That's what the whole movement's built on, as much as anything else. So I'll leave it at there.
Thank you, great suggestions. Mine, I just have one. Usually I just say, who gave birth to you? That's it. That's just me though. And also too, because of my culture, I just say to them, well, it's got nothing to do with my culture, and then they usually just leave me alone. They call me transphobe, then leave me alone. Anyway, okay, I think we can wrap it up because it is getting really, really hot. Louise is telling me to stop being a baby. But I think it's probably, and it's supposed to be stormy tomorrow, so, this time tomorrow we'll probably be all in our raincoats. I don't know. Thank you so much to everyone who came along. Thank you so much, Sonia, for that tribute. And to you too, Louise, who has made this amazing sign. I don't know if you can. It really is beautiful. It really is. It's quite something. Okay. And we will be back next year. Not January, because holiday season, and you know, we deserve a holiday, we deserve a break. But we will see you back in the new year. Thank you. Let women speak.
All right.
Just close it down.
We've got a bit of
So just see that cross there at the top? Yep. Thanks, everyone. And, okay, yep.